Okay. Hey guys, this is Royce, and today I am next to a lake. Why am I next to a lake? Well, it's because I want to convince you that you should probably try rereading Walden and Civil Disobedience. That's probably a name you haven't heard of in a while, and I don't blame you. It's a book you probably read in high school, but then just kind of forgot about. It was lumped together with all the other books you had to read, like White Fang and Call of the Wild, and I don't know, there's other ones. There's lots of other ones. Probably Christmas Carol, The Odyssey. Anyway, there's some great books you read in high school, but I also feel like you don't really learn to appreciate most of them because, well, you don't really give a shit because it's high school. If it's an assigned book, you're not going to enjoy reading it. Coming back to what I was saying, so I read it back in high school, and it was one of the only books I read that I actually enjoyed, and so recently I went back and I reread it. And I really liked it, and it made me think about what it's like trying to step back or read something. So that's what I'm going to kind of do today. This isn't the ideal location setup I wanted. There's actually a dude down closer to the water that I wanted, but he's still there. And the camera's next to a sprinkler, so if it goes off, I'm screwed. Alrighty, so that guy finally moved. So I'm in the spot where I wanted to be, but yeah, I don't really know how to go about this. Yeah, let's start off again with why I'm here. So, obviously in Walden and Civil Disobedience, it takes place at a pond, Walden Pond, which was in Concord, Massachusetts, I believe, in the 1840s or 50s. But why I chose to film the beginning portion of it here is because this is my own kind of Walden Pond in a way. I don't live in this area anymore, but when I did, this was a place that I would actually ride my bike to on a regular basis, especially like in high school, whenever I was just wanted to be by myself and just kind of relax and hang out. And I don't know, I listen to music or write stupid poetry or just want to be inspired and just relax. This would be the spot, because it's kind of where it shaped. It's like this little walkway you go down to, and it feels kind of secluded. Like you get your own little private view of the. Well, this is a lake. It's not a pond, even though it's not really that big either. But it works. I can definitely understand that feeling of being around water, especially, and just nature. Humans are just naturally attracted to it. You know, we love water. We love being near it because it's a source for vegetation and food and hydration. Obviously, I mean this is man-made, so it doesn't need to be here. But there's local habitat coming in, like over. You don't see them, but there's geese over there, ducks, and stuff. And so even though it's been a man-made creation, it's still kind of it's connected within the ecosystem of this area now. I mean, obviously there's houses around it and it's suburbanized. I don't know if that's a word. If I could give you one reason why you should read it, I think it would be, well, I mean, don't read a book if you absolutely don't want to read it. Obviously, don't read it. I don't think anyone should be forced to read anything. It should all come from your own interest. But the reason why I found something from it, looking back years later reading it, is because Walden has this very specific way he approaches talking about nature. And I love nature. Like, nature's been an integral part of growing up for me. And, I always loved camping and hiking and just any kind of outdoor kind of thing. I still do. But I think that's really what attached me to the book so well. And even though it was written, in the 1800s, so we're talking, 200 years ago, it still feels just as relevant today in a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. Because basically Walden is kind of a summary of not just man's disconnection from nature, but also his insatiable need for more. And that's what Walden was. He was, at the time, he was actually a transcendentalist, which was a movement that was wholly American. It was started in America by his good friend Ralph Emerson, who was another famous writer on this subject. And their whole original philosophy basically based around this idea of doing away, not entirely, but having time to connect and get back with nature, not really relying as much on society, but kind of going back to your roots in a way, your most primal state, because Thoreau did, the writer of Walden. Yeah, that's why he even came here in the first place, or he went to a lake as he built a cabin, and it was an experiment for him just to see what 2 years living pretty much a mile away from the next nearest house could do to you. Would it make you go crazy? Would it make you more secluded? What were the benefits? What were the pros and cons? And Walden is essentially a journal of those different thoughts spanning that 2-year period, along with all the encounters he had with other people, his encounters in nature, what it was like just living by himself, all these little minute details. He all documents within the pages of it. And it's really remarkable stuff. He says some really, the line most of you have probably heard is, the most famous line in the book is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically, most men live lives of quiet desperation. Essentially that man is not really happy for the most part. We might pretend a person might pretend they're happy, but it's not the same thing as actually being happy itself, and so the book really dives into that disconnect between that outward appearance of happiness and success and what real success lies in. And his whole philosophy is it wasn't really materialism or capitalist based, where it was how much success can you get, how much can you accumulate, how much wealth, all those things that still are, it's made society what it is today, but it's also come at a great cost. And even 200 years ago, Thoreau was having those thoughts about the way society was going. And we're still experiencing those same problems today. And so that's kind of really what the book is about. It's about understanding that most of us are unhappy with our lives most of the time. And we do all have that urge to kind of come back to our roots, come back to nature, and hopefully learn something. Alrighty, so back at the house now with the book. So this is it. I rented it from the library. So I read this and then I'm in the middle of reading Walking, which is kind of a companion piece to Walden. It's a lot shorter, and I'm not all the way through it yet, but it's kind of some of his reflections in his later years before he passed. It's another great book. I highly recommend it. If you enjoy Walden, you'll enjoy that book a lot. Walden was written, I believe, I'm going to get this wrong. I should have done way more research. Here we go. Yeah, 1845. Sorry, 1845. And then it was 2 years, so it's 1845 to 1847. So the first half is most of the book is about his experience in Walden, and then the last portion, Civil Disobedience, is his anti-slavery rebuttal that basically he made, where he said, that slavery is wrong. That was another reason, one of his critiques that he didn't like of society, because at the time, slavery was still considered okay. And he basically said, I don't want to be part of a society that allows men to be slaves to other men. Which was very forward-thinking at the time, because a lot of people weren't like that, but this kind of transcendentalist movement really was. And I think I think it's so interesting that even though transcendentalism is a wholly American philosophy, it didn't come over from Europe. Most of the ideas it has a lot. It was one of the very first philosophies to really kind of include notions of Eastern mysticism and a lot of those ideas. Like if you look throughout some of the writings, there's a lot of talk of being one with nature. He even quotes a decent amount of Eastern philosophical figures throughout the book, which I think is really fascinating. As you can't really see, but I bookmarked a lot of stuff. I want to save the time of going over every bookmark because there's a lot, but I think some of the stuff he says at the end in his conclusion is very interesting. But if you look at the layout of the chapters, he talks about, like, he'll have economy, where I lived, what I lived for, and then he'll have a chapter about reading, sound, solitude, visitors, the bean field, the village, the ponds, baker farm, higher laws, brute neighbors, housewarming, former inhabitants, winter animals, the pond in winter, and spring in conclusion. So very basic most of the time, just one word chapters, and then he just kind of, they feel like diary entries where he's just writing about his observations, very small stuff like, oh, I met a traveler today and we had a meal and we had a good laugh, or I went fishing. Talks about the color of the leaves changing, or these little small minute details. And it really shows that he had a lot of intention with what he was doing. In the conclusion section, there's a portion where he writes, direct your eyes inward and you'll find 1,000 regions in your mind, yet undiscovered. Travel them and be an expert in their cosmography. I think that's a really interesting thing he says, because he really highlights the importance of finding yourself. It's such an overplayed trope at this point. And it's used very loosely. I want to go find myself. And that's a lifelong journey for everyone. I'm still in that process. I'm sure you are watching are as well. We're all in that, but I think it's so interestingly put how he says that there's a whole universe within each one of us. And it's our goal that by the time we pass, we're able to visualize and, explore our minds, because our minds are a lot deeper than we realize. We're each so unique. We each have this specific little thing to offer. And he says he really praises this idea of finding yourself, because if you're able to really have that self-actualization, that self-realization of yourself, you're going to be you're going to be a helpful person in society. You're going to be a better son, better daughter, friend, brother, neighbor, lover, worker, employee, boss, all those things. Whatever position, you'll end up being a better person at all those things, because you know who you are, or you have a good idea of that, and so you're self-aware enough to look inward, and then you're able to share outward. And it's all empathy is what he teaches a lot. This way he says, why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed, and in such desperate enterprises? If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. It is not important that he should mature as soon as an apple tree or an oak. Should he turn his spring into summer? I think that's really well put, where he kind of talks about how we each have our own drummer, and we're the only ones that can hear it. I heard there was this, I was watching this, or listening to this podcast with Rick Rubin was on, and that's what he basically said when he was talking about music, and he was saying how most of the time, not just artists, but anyone in general, if they have a call in life, they're the only one that can hear that noise. Everyone else around them are deaf. It's like that idea of you're dancing and everyone else around you is like, you're crazy. And it's like, no, you're crazy because you can't hear the music. I can hear the music, so I dance to it. And that really puts things in perspective, where everyone's kind of on their own journey. And there's no one set time for everything. Why would you want spring to be your summer? It's not that season. Everything is seasonal based. And so we need to experience it at that time. Don't compare yourself to other people. You gotta live in the moment you're in right now, because it's like that for a reason. And I really love that. Near the end, in the conclusion chapter, where he says, however mean your life is, meet it and live it. Do not shut it and call it hard times. It is not so bad as you are. It looks poorest when you are richest. The fault finder will find faults even in paradise. Love your life, poor as it is. You may perhaps have some pleasant, thrilling, glorious hours even in a poorhouse. The setting sun is reflected from the windows of the almhouse as brightly as from the rich man's abode. The snow melts before its door as early as the spring. I did not see, but a quiet mind may live in a contentedly there, and have as cheering thoughts as in a palace. I think that's a really important thing, where he says, live your life and also love your life. Live, love, love. So basically, Henry David Thoreau is telling you to live, laugh, love.
So gives validity to that. It says basically live your life. If you have a calling, go for it. Even if people think you're weird or they look down upon you based on class or race or whatever reason. It's so easy to find faults and judgments of people, but if you're just yourself and you're true to that, that's all that matters. So cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. But anyway, I don't know if that little talk helped at all. This kind of went long, but yeah, please read this book. It's really good, and I hope you get something out of it like I did. Alright guys, I know it's been a little bit since I last posted. I just finished finals yesterday, so I'm going to start going back to the regular routine of posting once a week. So yeah, look out for more stuff, and yeah, I'll catch you guys later.